Hello friends, welcome to our course Threat Hunting in Cyber World. So in the last part, we looked after threat intelligence and the importance of threat intelligence in performing threat hunting. So in this part, we'll be looking at the entire threat hunting methodology, wherein we'll cover the various topics such as threat hunting process, threat hunting loop, the pyramid of pain, hunting maturity model, attack for hunts, and hunt or be hunted. So that's on you whether you want to hunt something or be hunted by someone. So that's the threat hunting methodology for you. So let's quickly start with our first part, which is known as threat hunting process. So in a threat hunting process, there are various ways of performing threat hunting. So if you quickly remember our first part of introduction to threat hunting, we said that threat hunting is nothing but finding stuff. So there are various ways of finding stuff. So first one is the manual way. In the manual way, the analyst needs to continuously look out for anything in an environment which could be any kind of indicator of compromise or an evidence of any kind of intrusion. So this is important for threat hunter to keep current on our latest security research. So if a threat hunter is not well versed with our latest kind of attacks or threats in a cyber world, he won't be able to perform a manual threat hunting because that requires the latest kind of attack knowledge or a threat knowledge, the in and out of the cause of an attack, the various output of an attack, the various indicators of an attack, then only you would be able to identify or detect those attacks in your environment. If you don't know how the attack happened or how the attack knowledge or how is the attack procedure, you won't be able to detect or identify it in your environment. So that's the most important task of any kind of threat hunter. So that's the manual way of performing a threat hunting. And how is the manual way? You write search queries in your SIM platform or in your log management platform or any kind of threat hunting platform. So where a asset or a threat hunter would be able to write any kind of manual search queries, and based on the search queries we would be able to detect any kind of threats in your environment. So we would be looking after the various hunts of threat hunting as well, which would be the manual way of carrying out a threat hunting. But the most and the foremost important thing for any kind of manual hunting is that the threat hunter should be able to keep current on our latest security research. Now our second way is automated or machine assisted way. So here the analyst or the hunter would be performing or would be using any kind of software which has a machine learning or a UEBA feature into it. So what is a UEBA? Is user entity behavior analytics, which is basically a threat, which is basically a machine learning way, you can say. So UEBA also contains intern or backend a machine learning algorithm which performs some kind of algorithm into your data, and once it performs or learns any kind of algorithms out of your data, it will point out that there is a kind of hike or a security breach or a kind of a traffic spike in your environment, or this is a kind of abnormal activity in your environment, or this is a kind of anomalous behavior which is something different from normal. So the machine assisted way is anything which is getting diverted from baselining. So a machine learning algorithm or a UA platform will actually learn your data for a day or a week, and once they get well versed with the data, they will be able to perform or identify the baselining for all of your assets, machine, or your entities, and based on that it will be able to identify if any kind of activity gets diverted from the baselining. So that's our automated or a machine assisted way. So it would be helpful in providing the predictive or prescriptive analytics. So basically predictive in the sense it would be able to predict based on its learning of machine learning, it will be able to predict whether something is going to happen based on the anomalies or some kind of initial activities of a malware. I think this may be happening in the future or something like that. So that will be a predictive analytics which will be performed by the machine learning algorithms, and the prescriptive where it will also prescribe you that this is something which is going to happen and this is what you need to do. So that's a prescription which will be provided by the softwares which will be leveraged by analyst. So that's two ways of performing hunting, a manual and an automated way. Now, what do you think would be a more uh, actual great approach or a more effective approach of performing threat hunting? So that's a word which we'll be using very frequently in this entire course, effectiveness. So automated or machine assisted way is good if you are having a large chunk of data, and threat hunting is obviously useful or effective where you have tons and tons of data where your softwares will be able to perform any kind of algorithms, or even if you have a manual way you need to have some kind of meaningful data to perform any kind of hunting over it. So yes, manual way is also useful and automated way is also useful. So mine approach would be a combination of manual as well as an automated approach. So you get alerts or you get the intel out of this UEBA or machine learning algorithms. You get the output out of those machine assisted way. You analyze those alerts out of it, whether you are getting actually a false positive or true positive kind of thing, and you continue your manual way as well, because as I said, threat hunting can never be fully automated. It's semi-automated kind of a way. You need to perform a manual intervention wherever it is required. So that's how it is. A combination of manual and automated is the best way to perform threat hunting. So even if it is a machine learning way or UEBA way, it may throw a lot of false positives as well. So manual comes into picture, and yes, sometimes a latest intel or latest threats or a zero day attacks. So in that way scenario, if it is not using any kind of out of the box approach, your machine learning will not be able to highlight any kind of spike or baselining. So in that way, your manual hunting program or manual hunting way comes into picture, where you have the knowledge of how the attack behaves and then you look out for those attacks. So yeah, you need to have a combination of both. So the threat hunting process, it's an hypothesis driven approach, you can say. So now what is hypothesis? So hypothesis is nothing but an assumption of an attack behavior. So you can also call it as an actionable use case based on observation, intelligence, and experience. So if I say that there is an emoted malware or there is a new version of an emoted malware, so you need to assume that you have been infected by that malware and this is the kind of behavior which the malware is following. So once you assume that, based on the intelligence or based on the experience or based on the various observations that you have, once you assume the hypothesis environment, that's where you then start with your threat hunting process. You gather intel, you look out for data, you hunt it using manual way or search queries, and then your entire threat hunting process comes into picture. So there are various types of hypothesis: analytics driven, situational driven, and intelligence driven. So analytics driven is basically machine learning and UEBA way, where you have risk scores basically defined based on the assets. So that's the analytical way. A situational way will be your crown jewel analysis. So basically each and every organization have the crown jewel assets which has been defined in the risk assessment reports. So we'll be targeting basically those assets first and looking out for any kind of malicious behaviors or looking out for any kind of anomalous activities to those assets. So that's where your hypothesis will be defined to crown jewel assets first. And last but not the least, intelligence, which we have already discussed, like threat intelligence, the threat intelligence report, malware analysis output, vulnerability scans, your threat intelligence feeds, which you incorporate into your basically log management dashboards. So hypothesis can be developed using any kind of public APT report, Twitter, security news articles, any way, and the way you get your threat intelligence ideas, it's a similar way you will be getting a hypothesis. And you assume that you have been under a attack or you have been assumption under that any kind of a threat behavior or a threat kind of intelligence. Assume and then in just move ahead with your threat hunting process. So that's the process for you, a proper process where first step involves development of hypothesis. Your second step would be to gather data out of it, or if you have your SIM platform, so you can refer to those platform basically what are the log sources integrated in your platform. A third step would be to test the hypothesis which has been developed in the first step. A fourth step would be once you test those hypotheses in your environment, you automate those tasks basically by creating any kind of rule or an alarm of those hypotheses. And last but not the least, operationalizing the hunting. So basically, this is the various 5 steps where you need to follow your threat hunting. So hypothesis, as I said, it's a basically an assumption. So develop, gather, test, automate, and operationalize your threat hunting. So that's where your manual approach or a manual task of a threat hunter would also get reduced once the task gets automized. So a manual intervention or a manual way would also be there because each and every day there will be new threats coming, and there obviously you'll be developing new hypotheses, gathering data, testing those new hypotheses, automating new tasks, and then again operationalizing those entire flow of your threat hunting. So that's a threat hunting process for you. So we also have a threat hunting loop and other topics, but for this part, we'll be stopping at this process. So that thank you very much for your time. Hope you're liking this video series. So in this next part, we'll be looking at threat hunting loop and the hunting maturity model. Thank you very much. Bye bye.